If you had to pick one weapon as the best in Terraria, which one would you pick? It's a question that's been on my mind for a while. The thing is, Terraria has 594 weapons, and it's hard to directly compare them because they're spread throughout the game. If you just look at damage, well, the Zenith, the Jousting, there aren't that many contenders. But those weapons aren't actually useful for playing the game, so I wouldn't say they're very good. For a weapon to be good, it needs to be helpful for the challenges you're going to face. Let's take two great weapons, the Boomstick and the Terra Prisma. They're both incredible, but which one is better? It comes down to four things: damage, ease of use, ease of obtainment, and versatility. In other words, how strong is it? How easy is it to use that strength? How easy is it to get? And how many things can you use it for? A weapon that's strong for one boss is good. A weapon that's strong for a lot of bosses and events is incredible. Between the Boomstick and the Terra Prisma, they're both very strong and easy to use. The Terra Prisma has a strong edge in crowd control, but it's so difficult to get a Terra Prisma that I'd rank it well below the Boomstick. You have to no-hit a pretty difficult boss versus opening a chest. Those are just two weapons though, two weapons out of way too many. I went through every single weapon in the game on stream with these four things in mind and narrowed it down to 8 candidates, 2 from each class. So let's rank those 8 weapons from worst to best, starting with what I'd call the 8th best weapon in the game, the Shadow Flame Knife. Now, I know, there's no way I just said the Shadow Flame Knife is the 8th best weapon in the game, but bear with me, because it's a lot better than most people give it credit for. The Shadow Flame Knife comes from Goblin Warlocks, the hard mode enemy during Goblin invasions. This is an event that you can reasonably get a summon for in pre-hard mode and fight with pre-hard mode weapons the moment you get into hard mode. The Goblin Warlock can look scary, but she's easy to handle if you know what to do. She alternates between standing still and warlocking a Shadow Flame apparition and flying above your head to shoot you with Chaos Balls. These Chaos Balls do a lot of damage, but a weapon like the Knight's Edge provides complete 360-degree protection against it, as does an Inferno Potion. They will never get through a Knight's Edge. Her contact damage is high, but she doesn't try to hit you with it, and her apparitions, the main attacks that'll be hitting you, are relatively weak. If you build a solid platform to prevent you from getting shot by archers and take the Goblin Warlock up there, you can handle them with a Knight's Edge very easily. If you can't, or don't have a Knight's Edge to deal with Chaos Balls, Warlocks get stuck in a flying loop if you're standing 50 blocks in the air. Put a platform 50 blocks in the air, ideally in a spot where Goblin Sorcerers won't be harassing you, and you can just shoot down with your weapon of choice to kill them. Very simple, very straightforward, and very easy. If you're playing melee, getting a Goblin Battle Standard at the end of pre-hard mode is a pretty good idea. For your trouble, you get a thrown melee weapon that boasts very good performance across the board. It's got damage, attack speed, range, and you can just point at the thing you want dead and fire off knives at high speed, endlessly. Each knife that hits an enemy will bounce off them, hitting nearby targets up to 3 times with no damage fall off. It also applies the Shadow Flame debuff, an extra 15 DPS. This weapon is a godsend for early hard mode melee. Enemies are doing hundreds of damage per hit, bosses are staying outside the range of most weapons, and having something that you can use comfortably from a distance is incredible. The bouncing and the debuff makes it solid for wyverns and other worm enemies, as well as invasions. You can make a hole to throw a knife through to kill pirates. If you need to kill biomimics, you can just run in a straight line and throw the knife behind you. Good knockback means it keeps enemies stun locked at a distance, and it's perfectly fine to use for the mechanical bosses. Having some melee speed improves its projectile velocity, so I would definitely suggest drinking ale, but it handles the twins fine. The bouncing and the debuff works well for Skeletron Prime in his hands, and each projectile hitting up to 3 times makes it respectable against the Destroyer too. It's not the best option, but it is still usable up to Plantera. The bouncing with debuffs can do a fantastic job of clearing her tendrils in phase 2, especially when combined with other debuffs. That's the other thing, the Shadow Flame Knife uses flasks better than any other melee weapon. It hits quickly and from a distance, so Ichor is great on it. Defense down is stronger the more frequently you hit. And since it applies a debuff innately and is able to hit multiple enemies from a distance, it's great for applying debuffs, letting you put together a debuff stacking build. Slap on Frost Armor, drink a flask of Cursed Flames, and equip a Magma Stone or Fire Gauntlet, and you'll be doing 79 damage per second through damage over time effects. That'll stack up a lot when you're fighting multiple enemies. All of that, and it's a melee weapon, so you get to have armor with the best defense in the game. Is it the best damage possible? No, there are stronger weapons. It's not the best at dealing with any one thing, but it is good at dealing with everything. Number 7 is another early hard mode weapon, the Daedalus Stormbow. This weapon would be number 1 or 2 on this list if it were not for the fact that it is nearly unusable in 2/3 of the world. It's a hollowed mimic drop, 25% chance. If you ever struggle with farming Souls of Light, you can go to the underworld where the hollow touches it. You still get the pre-hard mode enemies in hell, and they can drop souls. The mimics themselves just run in a straight line and shoot behind you. As for the weapon, it shoots arrows from the sky. These arrows do a lot of damage. However much damage you're thinking of, they do more. Most of the weapons in Terraria are beautiful, holy creatures. The Stormbow is a disgusting freak of nature, a little gremlin that crawled out of hell carrying a nuclear bomb. Now, hold on, wasn't the Stormbow nerfed like 6 years ago? Yes, and it's still ridiculous. For the most part, holy arrows got nerfed, and the Stormbow with holy arrows was absurd. Now, holy arrows kinda suck, but the Stormbow is still really good. Multiplayer world a while ago, 24 players. You know what weapon was at the top of the damage leaderboard for the mechs? Stormbow. You can use it on the Twins, on Prime, on the Destroyer. You can sit in a box and shoot outside during invasions. It's one of the best weapons for early Duke Fishron. It's good on Plantera if you make a tall ceiling, on Golem if you make a tall ceiling. It has better stats than a Chlorophyte Shotbow. It's a genetic freak, and it's not normal. When you're using the Stormbow, for most enemies you really want projectile velocity so that you can land your shots. The magic quiver, archery potions, or arrows with high innate velocity like Ichor arrows work very well. In general, I would suggest Ichor arrows or cursed arrows. Holy arrows are good against low defense targets or if you just need to carpet bomb an area. On the Destroyer, you want to use unholy arrows and just sit in the sky shooting downward. After the mechs, Chlorophyte arrows can compensate for the inaccuracy and can be a very safe option for handling invasions. The Stormbow is easy to get, easy to use, punches way above its weight class as a pre-mech weapon, but it is completely unusable unless the sky is open, and I have to dock it some points because of that. You can't protect yourself when you're mining, you might hit floating islands or random blocks above you, but as long as what you're fighting is open to the sky, the Stormbow will shred it to pieces. Next up, I'm putting the Blade Staff. It's a weapon with a lot going for it. Extremely good AI, great damage, but it is a 1 in 3 drop from one of the most annoying bosses in the game. It's by far the least likely weapon on this list for me to actually use in a playthrough because of that. I really don't like Queen Slime. It's a bit difficult to rank summoner weapons because there's a huge gap between how strong they are in the worst situations and the best situations. Then you also have whips, which aren't very good as actual weapons, but make minions much, much stronger. I'm treating them like ammunition, support to make the main weapon better. At face value, if you aren't playing a summoner and just summon a blade staff or 2 for self-defense, it sucks. It has no knockback, and 1 or 2 blades with no whips is frankly pathetic damage. But it is possible to give the blade staff a knockback, and if you do, it's a bit better. It's not enough to stun lock everything, but it will significantly delay and stun most enemies, and serve as an early detection that something is nearby. Most knockback bonuses are percentage based, but there are a small number of flat knockback bonuses. If you use one of those, usually eating food, the blade staff can gain knockback. Knockback values are set on summoning minions, so you need to eat food before using the blade staff, and if the food buff wears off, they will still have the knockback bonus. If you're actually a summoner, using whips with a high number of blades, this makes them able to stun lock literally any enemy that can take knockback, even Bone Lee in the post-Plantera dungeon. It's a bit ridiculous. It's practically impossible for any enemy to get through. So, that's high potential if you do a non-intuitive thing, but pretty bad if you don't. The blade staff in general is not the most intuitive weapon. Each of these daggers is individually very weak, but they attack multiple times per second and get a lot stronger from flat damage bonuses. If you do 8 base damage, that's not much, but if you get an extra 6 damage from a cool whip and 5 damage from a reforge, suddenly your weapon starts doing a lot more damage. You've more than doubled it. Each minion multiplies the damage more. 2 blades isn't that much, but 6 blades is 3 times stronger. It's a bit more setup dependent. You can't just pick up a blade staff and expect it to shine, but it really excels once you give it that support. With an Ichor Flask, you'll be ignoring 40 points of defense, which almost no enemies are able to beat. Spinning Skeletron Prime and Duke Fishron's first phase are about the only things you might be fighting that can. You do need to stay close to enemies to be able to use whips, and you're not likely to have high defense. It can be awkward on the Twins, especially Spasmatism's second phase. Because of that lack of range, he's very hard to whip. I also find Skeletron Prime to not not be very comfortable with it for the same reason. Once you take out the laser hand, it gets a lot more manageable, but up until that point, it's not the easiest to use. Blades have piercing and annihilate probes, so they're very good against the destroyer. They protect you against tortoises quite well because hitting one cancels their spinning attack, but be warned that their AI prioritizes distant targets over close ones, so they may not protect you if they're preoccupied with something else. They're excellent on Plantera and are probably the best summoner weapon at handling hard mode dungeon enemies because of their ridiculous stun locking. Past this point, you would think they fall off, but a few whips start to give obscene tag bonuses now. The Dark Harvest gives 15 tag damage and causes an AoE attack to fly out of enemies every time they get hit. Well, the Blade Staff benefits more from tag damage than any other minion, and hits more frequently than any other minion in the game. Against crowds of enemies, Golem, the tier 3 Old One's army, the pillars, the combo of the two will eviscerate them. This is a pre-mech weapon, coasting off of an overpowered synergy. It's even possible, although not particularly easy, to kill the post-Golem Old One's army with a Blade Staff, Dark Harvest, and no sentries. The Kaleidoscope gives 20 tag damage and crit chance. Blades output a ton of damage with that. This is absurd. The main hiccups are coming from Queen Slime, having unintuitive jank, and just general summoner clunkiness. It can do a lot, but getting it to its full potential isn't the easiest. I would rather have a Shadow Flame Knife or a Stormbow to kill the mechs with than a Blade Staff, but the whip synergies after Plantera really let the Blade Staff do comical stuff that those weapons can't come anywhere near. Queen Slime doesn't handle water well, so a Lava Shark in an underwater arena can make the fight a lot easier. She also doesn't handle straight lines well, so a flat walkway or a minecart track works pretty well. The Phoenix Blaster is up next at number 5. The Phoenix Blaster is my favorite weapon in the game. I've beaten the entire game with a Phoenix Blaster, multiple times. I will get it in every playthrough, unless there's some reason I can't. It's unassuming, but it just works. All it takes is a handgun and 10 hellstone, very simple to craft. All treasure in the dungeon generates in a predetermined order, and the handgun is at the end of that list. If you see a wooden chest or a Muramasa, there's usually a handgun nearby, although it's not an exact science. Late in pre-hard mode, the Phoenix Blaster is an all-around all-star. It's great for protecting you from regular enemies and the Wall of Flesh. It's not overpowered. Within Ranger, the Hellwing Bow and Quad Barrel can dish out more damage, and other classes have very strong options. It's not a Knight's Edge or a Demon Scythe, but flexibility and versatility, not raw power, are what make the Phoenix Blaster incredible. I don't think there is any other weapon in the game as consistent against the Wall of Flesh as the Phoenix Blaster is. It doesn't matter if you're in single player or multiplayer, or if you're on a secret seed. It doesn't matter if you removed or kept obsidian houses, built the arena with blocks, planter boxes, or if you're raw dogging it with water walking. You just show up and shoot him until he dies. I pretty consistently get the top of damage rankings in multiplayer worlds when I'm using it, and it would be my weapon of choice if I needed something to kill the Wall of Flesh no matter what. It will do well in every pre-hard mode situation, with the one exception of AoE because bullets just don't have good piercing at this point. Once you get into hard mode, virtually every weapon from pre-hard mode becomes useless and you try to find a replacement as soon as you can. The Phoenix Blaster doesn't. In fact, it stays competitive with early hard mode options. The Arms Dealer begins selling empty bullets, and the Demolitionist sells explosive powder. Combined, you can make exploding bullets. These deal a ton of knockback, enough to stunlock almost any enemy in the game. If you combine that with the Phoenix Blaster's high rate of fire, you're walking into hard mode with a very versatile weapon. All of the new knockback resistant enemies can be managed from a distance safely. You need souls, you'd need to fend off bats and mushroom enemies when mining. Do you need a way to kill pirates or wyverns? Do you feel unsafe and want to attack through blocks? Exploding bullets do all of that wonderfully, and the Phoenix Blaster is by far the best weapon at using them. The Clockwork Assault Rifle has similar crowd control, but really struggles with defense. Shotguns are much worse at stun locking due to the lower rate of fire. Pirates give so many people trouble, but you can genuinely just buy a stack of exploding bullets and barricade your house. Shoot through a hole or just shoot the door. They explode. A tiny hut like this destroys pirates as long as you make sure not to kill captains. Only the ghosts that spawn when captains die are capable of attacking through blocks. This is a tried and true hardcore strategy, and I think the most consistent approach for early hard mode. So, you've got a great pre-hard mode weapon and a great early hard mode weapon for mobbing, protection, and the Wall of Flesh. Realistically, most people will just swap to a different weapon for the mechs, but the Phoenix Blaster can handle them, especially the twins. It's very similar to a clockwork assault rifle that's much less ammo efficient. Back in 1.3, I'd often just walk up to hard mode in hardcore and do the twins night 1 with a gravitation potion, necro armor, and a Phoenix Blaster. Crystal bullets are great, although once you get to Skeletron, the higher defense starts to hurt a little and you might want to swap to Ichor. It's not great on the Destroyer, but guns in general aren't. It manages probes, but you're better off making a hollowed repeater. You could even use it up to Plantera. One of the oldest videos on my channel is actually from a handguns only challenge fighting Plantera with it. Past that, it falls off completely, but this is a pre-hard mode weapon, one that's incredibly easy to get. We're getting into the serious powerhouses now. So far, we've had weapons that are lacking a little in one department. Everything from here on out excels at everything. And that takes us to the Razorblade Typhoon. Have you ever seen an enemy existing? Did you want him to stop doing that? Just cast a Razorblade Typhoon in their general direction. At least one weapon from Duke Fishron was gonna make this list, and in a head-to-head between all 6 of them, the Razorblade Typhoon handily comes out on top. The bubble gun packs a stronger punch, but it's a bit awkward to use and it doesn't handle crowds well. The Tsunami is also very, very good, and it can get better results if you're landing your shots, but the Razorblade Typhoon doesn't care about aiming, or whether you're fighting a single target or a crowd, or if you can even see the enemy. It destroys Golem, and the moons, and the eclipses, Martians, pillars, the cultists. You'd be hard-pressed to find something the Razorblade Typhoon isn't incredible at. I even see people continue to use it against the other pillars after Nebula and the Moon Lord sometimes. It's quite good. You're summoning a giant spinning wheel of death that tracks down and annihilates anything it touches. It is a 1 in 6 drop from Duke Fishron. He's not an easy boss, and it's not a high drop rate, but he's quite farmable because truffle worms are very easy to get. You can also potentially kill him at the start of hard mode. The Razorblade Typhoon makes the entirety of hard mode a joke if you get it early, but I'm treating Fishron as post-Plantera, not pre-mech. It does have a few disadvantages. The homing can be inconsistent at targeting specific enemies. It can have trouble in tight spaces. It is a magic weapon, so you need mana recovery and max mana to use it, but it's well worth it. Mage might suck for some parts of the game, but when it's good, it's good. Number 3 now is our second summoner weapon, and it is the Flinx Staff. The Flinx Staff in 1.4.4 was very good. In 1.4.5, after the addition of summoner weapon modifiers, it became incredible. To understand why, we need to look at what these modifiers do. They give armor penetration and tag damage bonuses in flat amounts. This disproportionately benefits minions with low damage because the lower your damage, the more that defense hurts, and the more that adding on extra damage helps. That's part of why the Blade Staff was so good too. Giving plus 10 damage to a minion with 80 damage is nothing. Giving plus 10 damage to a minion with 8 damage is phenomenal, and the Flinx Staff has 8 damage. Just giving the Flinx Staff armor penetration makes it very good at dealing with enemies, even if you aren't using whips. Previously, it would get shut down hard by any amount of defense, but it's easily dealing 3 to 4 times as much damage against a lot of these enemies now with a good reforge. If you add in a whip, Eye of Cthulhu, done. Brain of Cthulhu, you can literally sit completely still for phase 2 on a flat surface and the Flinx auto kills it. Queen Bee, it gets through her defense. It's even quite good on Skeletron. That's the kind of long-term relevancy you expect to see from Boomstick, Mini Shark, iconic early game weapons that carry you through most of pre-hard mode, but the Flinx does it better than them, and all it takes to get is 6 Flinx fur and some gold or platinum bars. 20 minutes in the underground snow biome, maybe. It's so strong and so easy to get that it's worth picking one up with an armor penetrating reforge even if you aren't playing summoner. Now, the other early game minions also get very strong because of the reforges. The Flinx is not unique in that respect, but it is the easiest to get. You don't need to sit there hoping for a blood moon to happen, and it has very good AI, unlike some minions. The gap between not having a Flinx Staff and having a Flinx Staff is massive, and it really is a defining weapon for summoners. If you take away the Blade Staff, well, it wasn't that easy to get to begin with, and you've got Spiders, Optic Staff, Sanguine Staff. If you take away the Flinx Staff, you've lost the main weapon that Summoner relies on to get through most of pre-hard mode, and you need to go back to the dark days where Summoners spent ages grinding for a usable weapon. It should not come as a surprise that the Terra Blade is Melee's second weapon on this list. Every weapon up to this point has had a weakness, something that it isn't just incredible at. The Terra Blade has no weaknesses. There is nothing that this weapon is bad at. If there's an enemy on your screen, you can fire off giant slashing beams of death to discourage that behavior. They're enormous, so it's not like you have to think about aiming. It's a melee weapon, so they do a ton of knockback. They also pierce 4 hits with 25% damage fall off, so it can handle crowds. They fire every swing, so it scales well with melee speed. The beams themselves do respectable damage. If you're close enough to hit the sword swing and the melee swing, you literally do double damage. And to get it, you need an evil sword, which is free, a blade of grass, which is a little inconvenient, a volcano, which is basically free, you're going to be mining hellstone, a Muramasa, which is pretty free, it's usually the first chest in the dungeon, a true Knight's Edge, which you get the upgrade materials for free by playing the game, a true Excalibur, which is basically free, and a broken hero sword, which has a high drop rate from Mothvons, and eclipses can be manually summoned from items in the temple. It sounds like a lot, but most of these things you just get given by playing the game. The Blade of Grass, Broken Hero Sword, and maybe Muramasa are the only pieces that require any effort, and that makes it really easy to get. It's mostly just getting a Broken Hero Sword, and I can't stress enough how ridiculously overtuned this thing is. The beams have a giant hitbox, travel across the entire screen, do high damage, they're good for bosses, they're good for events, and because you're melee, you innately get high defense. Even if you're not melee, just keeping a Terra Blade as a weapon to kill mobs is probably going to be easier and more comfortable than using a lot of other weapons. There's not a lot to say about it because it just does everything, and does everything very, very well. But it's only number 2 on this list. So that raises the question, what's better than this? Before we get to that, Terraria has a lot of weapons, and a lot of them didn't make this list. If a weapon isn't on this list, that doesn't mean it's bad, that doesn't mean it isn't great, it just means it didn't make the cut. As a few honorable mentions, the Sandgun is beautiful. I love the Sandgun. It's like a Phoenix Blaster available pre-boss that has infinite piercing with evil sand, but sand. You need to do so much setup and preparation to make this weapon not miserable to use, and it's a lot of trouble. You're going to be hard-pressed to find a stronger weapon against the Eater of Worlds, though. If you're ever struggling on Legendary mode with the evil bosses, break out a Sandgun. The true Excalibur is amazing, but it has such a short period of relevancy because it's immediately replaced with the Terra Blade after Plantera, and it's the Terra Blade, so you're always going to do that as soon as you can. The Knight's Edge is great, but it's not that great early hard mode, and it's pretty hard to use on the Wall of Flesh in multiplayer. Even in single player, I find that you usually need to spend a bit of time arena building to make it shine. I've died with a Knight's Edge in hardcore on the wall. That's not something I can say for most ranged or magic weapons. Star Fury is awesome, but as an actual weapon, it's pretty underwhelming, and I'm the person that will have a Star Fury in my hotbar for the Moonlord. As a utility tool, I love the Star Fury. I gave it a lot of shots, but it just wasn't performing well on bosses, and it's good for enemies, but mostly for cheesing them. Ranking it as a weapon, I really wasn't that impressed with it. The Mega Shark and Boomstick are both fantastic, and it hurts to leave them off this list, but the Phoenix Blaster kinda has them beat in these categories, especially with how well it performs early hard mode and how valuable that performance is. That's just scratching the surface. There are a lot of very good weapons. If you want to know exactly why I chose these ones and see my thoughts on every weapon in the game, I'd suggest watching these streams. So, the best weapon in Terraria, better than the Terra Blade, is the Rainbow Rod. If you're old, you might remember the Rainbow Rod as a terrible, pathetic weapon. It used to be awful, but now? It casts a fully controllable high damage missile that homes in if you stop controlling it and pierces. Effect-wise, that's everything. It's got damage, knockback, it's easy to use because it literally just homes in. It's got piercing, so you can use it on crowds and events, and you craft it with basic hollow materials and souls of sight. For regular enemies, you can just click and the missile will auto-home and effortlessly kill them. If you can't see them, don't worry, you can just control it and send it around the corner. It's so good at this that I honestly think it's one of the best weapons for handling the hard mode dungeon. You don't have to engage with the enemies, you can just shoot them around corners, and any mage is going to want a weapon for dealing with the hard mode dungeon to get Spectre armor, so it is genuinely very useful. You have complete control over your attack, and that gives you complete control over dealing with enemies. For bosses, on Skeletron Prime, I don't think a single weapon available on tier is able to kill his laser hand as effectively, and 90% of the Skeletron Prime fight is just killing the laser hand. At first glance, you might think that spamming the Rainbow Rod and letting homing do the work is best, and this does work, but if you control the attack and keep it on top of an enemy with your cursor, all of the piercing will get used up attacking that single enemy, and you'll immediately cast another one once it gets used. And you'll regenerate mana while doing this because you technically are not casting a spell while you're holding out the attack, so you don't have to drink mana potions and get mana sickness. This takes out the laser hand very, very quickly, and in general puts out a lot of damage against bosses. The piercing means you can just spam shots for the destroyer, it works well for Plantera too, and the Rainbow Rod's high innate damage, piercing, and homing can keep it respectable for Golem when supported with Spectre armor. You can take out Duke Fishron with it comfortably. It's really, really good. I have been incredibly impressed with this weapon every time I have tried to use it. Every weapon on this list is amazing, but the Rainbow Rod stands out as phenomenal. So that raises the question, are these weapons too good? For the most part, I don't think so. Most of them aren't overpowered, just very versatile and effective. I value versatility much more than outright damage, which probably comes down to doing a lot of challenge runs and working in suboptimal conditions. Sure, a weapon might be strong, but what about when you're in legendary mode, or if you don't have accessories or mobility, or if you're in hardcore and you don't want to fight dangerous enemies, so you want something that's really easy to get? Some of these are very strong, like the Blade Staff and Flinx Staff, but strong doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem. It's fun to have strong options. I think it becomes a problem when a weapon warps how strong every other weapon in the game is just by existing as a comparison. When I was going over the melee weapons, every single melee weapon after Plantera had to grapple with the fact that it was not a Terra Blade, the Terra Blade was usually easier to get, and the Terra Blade completely outclassed them. It's so strong that you don't need to change your weapon or do anything until the Solar Pillar. You're usually just looking at side grades or downgrades. I was constantly bringing it up as a comparison because it's meta warping, and I do think it's a bit too ubiquitous. 90% of the streams were just asking, does anything better than the Terra Blade exist? Is that a thing? Is that real? You'll notice that I didn't include how fun a weapon is, and that's because, well, it's completely subjective and will vary from person to person. What's boring for one person might be very fun for another. And, of course, these are all just my opinions, and I'm sure not everyone will agree with them. If you have any ideas on what you think is the best weapon, leave it in a comment below. I'll be sure to... Hatsune Miku?